Hello and good morning. I'm Heather Garbutt. I'm the director of the Counselling and Psychotherapy Centre, along with my good colleague, Christine Fishlock. And today I'm here to interview Tanya Orr. She's one of the counsellors at the Psychotherapy Centre in Swindon, and she specialises in trauma, attachment and dissociation. She's called Tanya, and I welcome you well.
Thank you very much, Heather. It's lovely to be here and chatting with you this morning.
That's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about what the work is that you do.
Yeah, I was trying to think of words to describe the work that I do. It's mainly relational. So it's about building a relationship with people and really helping them to find ways to manage life better, whatever the reason that life is difficult for them. But primarily I work with trauma and, as you said, attachment, and sometimes that comes with dissociation. And so I work with the body, and I work with our emotions, and I work with our minds, and I hopefully bring all of that together within the context of relationship. I believe that we hold a lot of our stress and trauma within our bodies, and so we need to pay attention to that as well as just the words. So that's how I work.
Yeah, so that's brilliant, because quite often people will experience the trauma in their body before they know what their trauma has been.
Absolutely. And often it's almost like the body has to shout to tell us that something we have just missed in our busyness or in our ways of coping or just ways of being. And sometimes it literally is the body saying just enough, and we have to stop and listen then. So that's often when people come to me when they're at that stage where they've, had maybe a chronic illness, or they've had a really difficult flu, or they've just been flattened somehow. And so I often see people come to me in that state. I love it if I can get people before that state, but sometimes that's where they come to me. Yeah.
So the body shouts when we don't listen to the rest.
Definitely does. Yes.
It's brilliant. So have you got, I know a lot of people have an overall mission, that they're driven to something in their work. And I wonder if you have a mission.
Yeah, when I kind of thought about that question, initially I thought, do I have a mission? But actually I do. I really want people to know that they have hope. I want people to know that through hard work and through therapy, there really is such hope for people to live better lives and to be more their true self, their best self, because we know so much now around neurobiology and our bodies and our mind all working together, that there really is hope. And I want people to believe that and to see that in me and to be able to hold on to that for themselves. So yeah, I guess it's bringing hope is my mission, really.
And that's beautiful, because I think when things have got chronic for people, they do lose hope.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and having you exemplify that for them and model it.
And hold it for them. Sometimes when they can't hold it themselves, I can hold the hope for, as all therapists do, we hold the hope for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. That's brilliant. So why are you doing this work? What took you to it?
That's a great question. So as far back as I can remember, anytime that I was anywhere, people would just come up to me and tell me their stories. Even if I had headphones on, was reading a book, was like body language, I don't want to talk to anybody, they still would come up and literally tell me incredibly personal and difficult things. And my mum used to, anytime I was away, my mum, as soon as I came home, she'd say, well, who did you meet this time? And so I kind of then began to think, there must be something about me that allows people to do that, or I must have, that kind of face that people just talk to in a bus queue or whatever. So I got interested. I was always interested in people. I love people watching. And so I kind of then got interested in psychology, and I'm an only child. So I was interested about, birth order and siblings and being an only child and all of that. And then I guess I just got the counselling bug and I studied a bit and then studied a bit more and studied a bit more. And I suppose the other thing for me is I grew up with, my mum was quite ill as I grew up and had rheumatoid arthritis throughout her whole body. And I was really aware of how she kind of had to manage life. And then I personally had an operation and 3 flus in 1 year. And then I developed ME. And I kept going and going because nobody really knew what ME was at the time. And I kept trying to force myself to do stuff, and then totally like collapsed and was bedbound, well, housebound more than bedbound. And then I realized, again, and sort of doing my own therapy and my own work, what were my drivers? What was I trying to avoid? What was I trying to do? And then it just kind of, all of that came together into what I then found as sensory motor therapy, sensory motor psychotherapy. And it kind of felt like home to me because it just brought the body and the mind and the spirit all together. So that's kind of how I got into this, but mainly people coming up to me on train stations and airports and telling me their story.
It feels like it's very deep rooted in you, like from that heritage and that really early life, but then from your own experience, like it from the inside out.
Definitely, yes.
And then you found the model and the training that really fits with all that, gives you the solutions. Absolutely. So you can really support others. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think doing my own work as well, as you said, like knowing it, knowing it, not just knowing it, really makes the difference. And I've certainly had, clients tell me that they see the reality in me. It's not just theory. And for me, that's really important, that I can be authentic. And then it's okay for me to expect others to be authentic if I'm authentic too, but I can't take people where I won't go. If I avoid something, I can't expect them to go there. So that's really a big kind of, I suppose it is a driver in me too.
And a real asset to your clients that you've had the courage to go places already, not just sending them on ahead.
Yes. Still a struggle sometimes in my own therapy, but pressing on. We all have work to do, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. All a work in progress.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how your specialism works, because I think we sort of covered why you're passionate about it in the other parts that we've just discussed. So tell me how your specialism works.
Yeah, so predominantly it is a body-based therapy, but we don't often do a lot of like physicality body work. We can do, but mainly it's about helping people to notice that they're embodied and to kind of pay attention to their body. And the premise of sensory motor psychotherapy is that our body holds all the intentions that we've ever had but haven't been able to complete. So for example, someone in a trauma situation who maybe has needed to run away or to push somebody away or to shout or whatever, but for whatever reason weren't able to do at the time, the body holds those incomplete or uncompleted responses. And so the work that I do is about helping people connect with those, recognize those, and to complete those in whatever way the body needs to do. Sometimes it might be actually pushing, like almost literally doing this movement, like push somebody away. Others, it might be just like pushing down, you can't see it, but I'm pushing on my legs at the moment, like I need to run away. Or sometimes it might just be a tiny, tiny movement, like just a fist being made or tightened. It could be an unclenching of the jaw, literally anything, but that the body has wisdom and that we can follow and trust in that wisdom. And that the thing for me that's most important about this modality is this way of working, is that we don't always have to know the narrative. So sometimes people come to counselling, particularly with abuse and trauma, and they don't want to tell the words, they don't want to say it, they don't want to hear it, they don't want somebody else to hear it. And actually you can work with somebody just following the body without having to tell the story. So it can be in a way, so it's not re-traumatizing. So that's something that's really important for me. So yeah, it's about paying attention to the body, but also, many people who come are body phobic, like their bodies being the source of the trauma and the danger and the things that have happened to them. So we wouldn't go fast any of this. It would be very gentle, very slow. I might simply notice that, I might say, so as you talk about that person or that situation, I notice, oh, your jaw's tightened a little bit. That's interesting, isn't it? And that literally might be it. Or then if a client maybe later on where we've got more of an established relationship and they feel a bit safer, I might say, I wonder, could we stay with that clenching of the jaw a little bit longer and see what happens? So it's a very paced way of working, which again, I think is important with people who've been who've had to deal with trauma.
Yeah, I get that, because if you've been traumatized in any way, then you're likely to go into a panicky state, and you really need to feel in control.
Totally. Yeah, that's really important to always check out with the client. I'll always be saying, does that make sense? Does that feel okay? What else? What do you need to do? Sometimes I might even say, what does your body need to do? It sounds a really random question, but the body always knows. And it's about just, going gently, being gentle. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It feels so safe.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the plan.
Very holding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could enumerate a few sorts of characteristics of people or the illnesses that they may be experiencing, could we just tease that out a bit more? The ones that would really benefit from your services.
Yeah. So anyone, I suppose from it's a bit of a continuum as all of this is, but so anyone who has something that is stopping them doing the things they want to do or feel a real, attachment to doing. So someone who has a lot of anxiety and panic attacks that stop them doing things that bring them joy, like meeting friends or going out or being able to work and that sort of thing. So from stress and panic and anxiety and even grief and complicated grief, but all the way then through to attachment wounds and attachment disorders, like emotionally unstable personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, and then the physical pains that people often, or situations that people come with, might be ME, fibromyalgia, might be irritable bowel syndrome. It might be unexplained, medically unexplained, pains and aches and extreme tiredness, kind of burnout type feelings, that all of those kind of things that just mean that people are not able to be safely in their body and doing the things that they want to do in their life. That's kind of like a big continuum, but those are the main kind of areas that I would see people come with.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Could you explain for the layperson what dissociation means? Because I know you and I know, but it just occurred to me they might not.
Good point. Yes. So dissociation, again, it's a bit of a continuum. Literally, we all dissociate. So we all daydream and we all zone out a bit, and we can drive somewhere and not remember the journey. So it's a very normal thing, dissociation. And also it's a bit of a safety valve kind of in our nervous system and our brain, that when we get overwhelmed, our kind of part of our brain goes, that's too much, and shuts off, so that we don't feel overwhelmed by all of the emotions that are coming on us for whatever reason, whether it's trauma or abuse or grief or stress or whatever. And so dissociation is kind of like, it's a great survival mechanism. I really believe that. It can help us survive things that are really overwhelming and that can feel life-threatening. The trouble with dissociation is when it becomes habitual and it becomes something that means we avoid dealing with the difficulties, and then we can miss out on good relationships, we can miss out on chunks of our day or our life, or we can be really forgetful about things. So a little bit of dissociation is good. It's okay. In fact, I think it can be helpful. But too much dissociation is, we're not meant to dissociate most of our time. So it's about bringing things back in balance again.
Yeah, got you. That's brilliant. That's very nicely put. I think that's probably one of the best explanations of dissociation I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go on to what happens in the initial sessions.
Sure.
How do you actually begin the work with people?
Yeah, so I actually ask clients to come, if we're doing face-to-face, to come to the room for a first session, or if we're working online to actually have a session, because for me it's really important that we really experience each other. So it is an assessment, but for me it's an assessment both ways. Do they feel like they can work with me as much as do I feel I've got the skills and ability to work with them? And so I'll explain that quite clearly. And then I will do an assessment, but because I work relationally, I don't have a piece of paper and, fill in a form. I will fill in something after the session, but just as kind of notes for myself. But I'll mainly be asking things about, how they're managing life at the moment, like what are the things that keep them going, because it's really important to have those up front rather than just get straight into the what's all the problems. So we talk about the resources that they have, maybe the people or the things that they do that keep them going and motivate them. And then we'll talk about, how life is now, what the struggles are, what the difficulties are. And then I will also ask things like, what was it like growing up? Not in great detail, but just a little bit of like, what was it like to be a child in your family or in your situation? What were the, the good things? What were the difficult things? What's been your kind of pattern in relationships, like friendships and romantic relationships and intimate relationships as well? And then I'll ask about, have they had previous counselling? Because that's really important, because if they've had previous counselling and it's been great, then I want to know what was great about it so we can do that. And if it wasn't great, then I really want to know what wasn't great and why that was and how we can kind of look out for that. It also gives me a bit of an idea, like if they've had just short-term counselling or long-term counselling, or kind of just what modality it was, what was helpful for them. And then I'll ask some questions that might be a bit tricky, but they're really important, I think, to say out loud. I'll ask about, what do they do to kind of help themselves when they're finding life really difficult? And I'll ask if they do things that are might be called self-harming behaviors, like would they hurt themselves, or would they, not eat, or, sleeping issues. I might ask about suicidal thoughts or plans, or have they ever tried? Just so they know that all of that's okay to bring, and that also it's helpful for me to know, just in terms of monitoring risk for them and for pacing of the work. I'll also ask them if they've got questions for me, if they have any specific kind of goals or expectations for the therapy. I'll be very clear that at times I'll get it wrong. I won't mean to, but I probably will, and it's helpful if they can tell me if I've got it wrong, rather than kind of just assume that I must be right, because I won't always be right. And I'll talk about kind of how we might pace the work that we do, sort of, what we might focus on first, what feels really important for them to work on initially. But also there might be something that is an easier win to work on first, and kind of just discuss and explore that, what we might do first. I'll explain the way that I work, that I do pay attention to the body and how they might feel about that. I'll assume they'll know that because they'll probably have read my website before they get there, but just to make sure. And then I'll just sort of say to them, really, it's an opportunity for anything else that I haven't asked them that they think is important to say, or that they expected that I would ask them that I haven't. Oh, I will also ask them about any medication or illnesses, and if they've previously had any kind of mental health diagnosis, because that's just helpful to know that as well, because medications can, cause side effects, and it's helpful just for me to be aware of that. So that's kind of mainly takes up the whole of the first session. There might be a little bit of time to maybe begin to plan what we might do next, but we probably won't get into any therapy in the first session. It's more, that kind of assessing of each other.
Yeah, so you're getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And you're getting to know what their difficulties and their strengths are, what's in their life.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're getting a feel for you and what it's like being with you and hearing your interest.
Yes.
It's building trust. Yeah, I feel all that. It feels very solid. It feels a very solid base to begin from.
Yeah, it feels important to do that rather than just jump into the work, because that then people can kind of go, oh my goodness, what's happened? So it does feel, and for some people, you know, if they've had a lot of really difficult stuff in their life, I might be really upfront and say, look, it might take us 2 or 3 weeks to actually kind of almost complete an assessment, both of us together, because it might be hard for them to tolerate being in relationship with me and all of that. So, you know, we might even say, let's take 3 weeks and then just review and see how we're going. And with other people, you know, really quickly, you know, both of us know that, yeah, this can work, or no, it can't, or whatever. So, but occasionally I might say, you know, let's just take a little bit longer to make sure that we're both happy.
Yeah, I love this. The steady gentleness, the way that you really look after people. It feels very, very, very kind, but very secure and very thought out.
Yeah, and I guess that's been my experience of good therapy as well. And in my training, that feels really important to me, that because we know if people aren't safe, if we don't feel safe in ourselves, we can't take on anything new. We can't take on new information. We can't actually be in relationship, and we're still in trauma. So therapy's not going to help. You know, attending every week isn't going to help if we can't feel at least a level of safety. So that's all of what you've said. It is really intentional and really important to me. Yeah.
It's lovely. So the question people often ask is, how long will the therapy take? Is it going to be 2 weeks, 2 years, two decades, you know?
It's a great question. And, you know, I am always surprised. For me, I suppose my main, the majority of the people that I see are what I would call long-term, and would be certainly over a year, potentially. You know, I've seen clients for 8, 9 years. And as long as there's a clinical need, and there often is in the work that I do, especially with early life attachment, wounding, and, you know, trauma, then there is. And I have no issue with that. Equally, you know, I have people who come with the most horrendous story, like life narrative, and they're so ready to do the work, and they not rush through it, because we're really confident about it, but they might be finished in, you know, 6 months. And, you know, and maybe they've done some of the previous work before. Maybe they've done some kind of body awareness, or they've done some stabilizing work, or they've got great resources. So you never can tell, really, honestly. But I'm very happy working with 6 weeks and working 6 years. So, you know, I'm kind of in it for however long it takes. And that's the important bit. Yeah.
Yeah, again, that gives people security.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else that we haven't discussed that you might want people to know?
I suppose the only other thing, just actually in answering that last question, I forgot to say that without being rigid about it, my underpinning theory is like what we call a 3-phase model. So it's the first phase is about stabilizing, giving the client information, psychoeducation, explaining, you know, how the body and the mind work, explaining how anxiety, stress, trauma impact us. So kind of normalizing how people are, you know, have learned to behave or to be. And so that's the first phase of the model. And that, you know, that could last 10 sessions, or it could last 5 years. You know, we need to be safe. And then we kind of move in and out between phases 1 and 2. And phase 2 is what I would call kind of processing the trauma. And so whatever those traumas are, so that might be dealing with the cause of anxiety. It might be actually doing some processing of actual traumatic experiences. It might be purely working with the body. And then once, and often this is where people leave counselling. And if people want to leave at this point, it's absolutely fine. However, I really believe the next stage is of vital importance as well. And it's about, now that you've processed the trauma and you've got more resources and you are now your more kind of authentic self and who you want to be, the world is going to feel different and people are going to react to you different because you're not reacting the way you used to before. And so we kind of have to acclimatize to that. And so if we're doing longer term work, well, I offer it to everyone, but particularly if we're doing longer term work, then this bit I think is really important as well. How are you going to manage, being this new version of you in the world where people know you as the old version of you, and not get tipped into those old patterns of behaving. So that feels really important as well. Not everybody gets to there, and that's okay. Everybody has their choice in that. But for me, that's something that, I think we can often miss in counselling. I know I did.
Well, yes, there's a lot of new skills to be learned and a lot of things to let go of and new things to embrace. Yeah. And your people around you may or may not actually adjust easily to who you've become. Yeah.
Often they don't.
Yeah. And so you may need help to help them adjust.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much. So tell me how people can contact you.
Yeah, so they can contact me through TCPC, through your website. I'm just getting out my phone number because I don't actually remember my new phone number. So you can email me on tanyaorrtherapy@gmail.com, and you can phone me and or leave a message on, I'm just having to read it out, 07482 449 834. And they're all on the website as well.
That's lovely. So that's the Counselling and Psychotherapy Centre in Swindon. And you work in person and on Zoom, and you can be reached by all of those ways. Thank you so much, Tanya. This has been enlightening for me to hear in depth how you work.
Lovely. Thank you so much, and brilliant questions. I really enjoyed them. Thank you. They made me think.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Thank you.
Right.